Welcome to Nonprofit Nerd Impact Unleashed, where conversations are designed for nonprofit leaders by nonprofit leaders to inspire, educate, and motivate. Get ready to dive into the world of nonprofits where the nerdy passion and unstoppable dedication of those making a real impact is celebrated. Together with your host, Jarrett Ransom, the inspiring stories, tactical insights, and game-changing strategies of nonprofit leaders will be explored. Join us for real talk with real people. Jarrett and her guests unravel the mysteries of successful fundraising, uncover the secrets of effective advocacy, and nerd out over innovative approaches to solving social challenges. Nonprofit Nerd Impact Unleashed is your go-to podcast for no-nonsense discussions with real-life superheroes of the nonprofit sector. Get ready to unleash your inner nerdiness and discover or rediscover how to change the world together. Now let's dive in and embrace the power of our nerdy side.
Hey, and welcome back, my nerdy friends. Today, I'm joined by Melissa Erickson. She is CFRE, Certified Fundraising Executive, also Executive Director of the Funding Studio and CEO of Fiscally Sponsored. I also learned that she teaches at Grand Canyon University. So clearly Melissa has more than 24 hours in her day, but she's someone that you're going to want to know. Melissa is doing incredible work helping artists, innovators, filmmakers, and mission-driven leaders access philanthropic funding through fiscal sponsorship and creative fundraising strategies. In this conversation, we unpack what fiscal sponsorship actually is, why it matters, and how it can help emerging organizations and projects reduce administrative burdens while focusing on mission and impact. Melissa shares insights into how fiscal sponsorship creates access to grant funding for individuals and mission-driven businesses that may not otherwise qualify for this philanthropic support. I'm telling you, she is full of information. We also dive into the growing need for education around fiscal sponsorship, especially as more projects and organizations look for collaborative, sustainable ways to create change without duplicating infrastructure. This episode, this conversation, it is packed with practical insight, creative thinking, passion, and nonprofit nerd goodness you won't want to miss. And before we jump in, a special thank you to Bloomerang for sponsoring this season of Nonprofit Nerd Impact Unleashed and helping these meaningful conversations happen. Thank you so much, Bloomerang, and enjoy this conversation with Melissa. Well, hello there and welcome. I am so glad because I am meeting a new friend. And yes, Melissa, I'm already fast tracking us to the friendship category, but so super grateful because our virtual assistant, we share the same virtual assistant, actually connected us. So shout out to you, Renee, for making this connection happen. I know. And with
we
that,
love
I do
Renee.
We love Renee. She keeps us going. Absolutely. So Melissa Erickson is with me today, and I want to kick this off by asking you the very first question to set the stage, Melissa. If you would, tell us about yourself as well as the role or roles. Yes, that's, more than one that you play in the sector that we love so much. Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, thank you so much for having me on the show today, Jared. I've really been looking forward to this. So I am Melissa Erickson. I am a CFRE, a Certified Fundraising Executive. I am an ambassador for the CFREs because I truly believe in this and having credentials in fundraising. And so I am the Executive Director of the Funding Studio and the CEO of Fiscally Sponsored. The Funding Studio, we are a dedicated fiscal sponsor nonprofit organization. So we exist to support arts and innovation. We are based in Arizona, but we serve organizations nationally. And what we do is we are the incubator space for projects that are either time-bound and are never going to be a nonprofit, but they would be eligible for philanthropic contributions, or projects that need a space to start up, incubate while they get their operations and funding underneath them. And then Fiscally Sponsored is a community that I run that is just for fiscally sponsored projects. So fiscal sponsorship is growing across the nation, and there was no space for all those projects to come together and talk about their very specific niche in our sector. So that's what Fiscally Sponsored does.
That is fantastic. And thank you. As I said before we hit record, I don't know how we haven't met yet, but now we have. We definitely have to get coffee together, meet in real life, because this is just phenomenal. And for me to know that you are right here in my community, but also serve beyond our immediate community is really good to know. So that takes me to another question, Melissa, is, as you serve director of the funding studio, and you're really sitting, as far as I'm understanding, at that intersection, right? The intersection of art, the intersection of business, as well as philanthropy. So I'm really curious, how does fiscal sponsorship change the game? Does it change the game for artists as well as innovators who want to create that impact?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with innovation first. So what we do is we provide that philanthropic arm. So say somebody wanted to start a sustainable fashion company and they wanted R&D that's focused on sustainability, and there were grants available in the world for that funding. But because they started up as an LLC, even though what they're wanting to do has a philanthropic mission, they're not eligible to apply for those funds. So through partnering with the fiscal sponsor, we are able to be that conduit that allows them to apply for those philanthropic funds, but we very much manage and oversee those funds. So it's definitely not a pass-through situation. We're the recipient, and then we re-grant those funds to them. But that's just a really, really good way for them to add philanthropy as an additional revenue source when it makes sense. So if it's just a strictly for-profit, no social good or impact, they're not a good candidate. But if they're doing something that's giving back to the world, we can absolutely have that conversation. And then as far as, artists, a really good example is I work with a lot of independent filmmakers. So they are not really designed to be standalone nonprofits. So they're going to make this film, right? Then they're going to sell it to a distributor, and then they're going to move on to their next project, right? So they're really not designed to be a long-term nonprofit entity unless there was like a production company that wanted to go that route, which we absolutely sponsor. So we are that conduit that allows them to apply for philanthropic grants, or my favorite spot to work with is with individuals. That is really my superpower. I was a major gift officer in the higher ed system. So I really, really work with them on, we're going to think bigger and broader than grants, and how do they tap into their network of people. So I do a lot of training, a lot of educating. I also teach on Indie Empire, which is a platform just for filmmakers on how do you use philanthropy. A lot of fiscal sponsors will give projects the keys to this Ferrari that I call it, and then, say, okay, go learn how to fundraise now, right? I spent years learning how to do this. So I make sure that they understand how philanthropy works, all the avenues that they have available to them, so that we're doing laps around an F1 track, not just trying to even get the thing started, right? Or driving around the block if we can do that. So that's really what the funding studio does. I was inspired to do this because I went to art school before I went to business school so I could buy food. And I got one class on how to survive as an artist. And it was like on a rainy Saturday afternoon. It was called Life in a Garret. I was like, well, this is not going to work. I am not Garret quality lifestyle person, right? So then I had to go to business school, fell in love with philanthropy. And that's when I decided to create my funding studio. And you can kind of see my background is very much my boho, dream art studio that I'm in, right? And that's really our approach, is we make it creative, we make it fun.
You are a lot of fun. I can feel the passion. It's so exciting. I've heard exude that same energy. And for those of you that are listening, yes, please also check us out on YouTube. You can see this beautiful boho background that Melissa's speaking of, and the two logos really flanking on each side. So it's really good. Well, Melissa, I heard you give a shout out to CFRE, Certified Fundraising Executive, and I love that you're super passionate in this space as well. I'm really curious with your experience with this credential, that CFRE. What are you seeing are the biggest, I don't know, I want to call them misconceptions that you see nonprofit leaders and creatives, right, have about funding and sustainability? Because you really come at it from this holistic standpoint, right? CFRE is a commitment, it is a dedication, it is a loyal practice to the practice itself of fundraising. So, what are you seeing in this space right now?
I think the biggest conversation that I have, or maybe not the biggest, the conversation I have the most is someone wants to start a philanthropic project and they think they're going to fund the entire thing with grants. And then I have to
Oh, yeah.
break the news to them that, only nationally, 19% of philanthropy is grants, right? So they are leaving all of these other philanthropic giving avenues, on the table. So I do a lot of coaching about doing comprehensive fundraising strategies and not putting all our eggs in one basket, because you never know when one's going to start drying up and then you need to focus on another one. So I also talk to them about funding the arc of their creative careers and not doing project by project. So they make a film and then they don't talk to those donors ever again. And then they have to start over and they don't talk to them again. And I really try to get them in the mindset of thinking like a nonprofit, of thinking about that donor pyramid. If people try them out one time and then they see if they make their film, and then if they do, right, then the next time they can ask for a bigger gift. So I really try and make a lot of little mini major gift officers out there. That's my mission in life.
Yeah. Well, and shout out, right? Because individual giving makes up the lion's share of philanthropy, right? DAFs are huge, but also, designated, oh gosh, help me. DAF.
Donor advised
I'm blanking.
funds.
Thank you. I'm like, why am I blanking on this right now? Donor advised funds. Thank you so much. Yeah, DAFs are trending, right? We're seeing a lot of growth in that DAF space, but who gives through DAFs? People, individuals, right? Like that's who makes this up. So, yeah, really, really good that you educate on the grants. I have done that too my entire career because I feel like it's the Ed McMahon syndrome, right? Where people think, oh, I'm going to write a grant and this huge foam check is going to show up at my door and it's going to solve all my funding problems. And that's just not true. So we can get on our soapbox for that. Maybe we'll save that for another conversation
time. Yeah,
another
absolutely.
One. Yeah, when we meet in person. Okay, what about, I want to kind of flip a little bit and talk more about the fiscal sponsorship for organizations that may not be ready, or maybe they don't need to. You mentioned a time-bound project. They don't need to become a 501c3. I'm really curious how fiscal sponsorships, right? Like how that can provide, I'm assuming, both structure and opportunity without an administrative burden. I don't think I've ever worked in a fiscal sponsored kind of like a setting. I'm very familiar with them, but would love for you to educate us on that because that is an option.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the reasons that I created the funding studio here in Arizona is because Arizona is in what's called a fiscal sponsorship desert. So any nonprofit can technically be a fiscal sponsor, and a lot of them practice it ad hoc. There's two big ones here in Arizona, me and TAP AZ, but there's other ones doing this as well, right? That are doing fiscal sponsorship as a designated program, meaning we are set up, we have created infrastructure specifically to manage projects that are not owned by us. So in fiscal sponsorship, there are models A through L, right? And we can get really nuanced and really go into that level of detail, but then we'd need a whole other show just on this. So the two main models are Model A and Model C. We practice Model C here at the funding studio. So what that is really re-granting fund, being the recipient, being the steward of those funds, and then re-granting them once they, prove to us that they're going to use this money specifically for philanthropic reasons, right? So there is a significant amount of oversight, and projects should see this as a massive benefit and bonus when they are talking to their funders to say, I'm new to the nonprofit space. Most nonprofits fail within the first 3 years, right? I am choosing to start up underneath infrastructure that already exists. I'm not duplicating operational expenses because that's already paid for by my fiscal sponsor, right? So we're decreasing duplication of efforts. And then you have someone who is seasoned in fundraising and nonprofit management, and we've been around for a while, right? We're not guessing. We actually do know the answers to the questions, right? So we're handling all that IRS compliance for the projects, which allows them to focus specifically on their mission. So they're not trying to accomplish their mission and now learning how to be an executive in the nonprofit space. So I've had projects say, look, I just want to program films. And I have to be like, you are never doing that again, because now you are running a business and now you get to hire someone else to do that thing that you loved. If you start up under a fiscal sponsor, we take on a significant amount of that administrative burden. I like to call the different models kind of thinking about it like renting an Airbnb, right? So you can rent a beautiful cabin in the woods, right? But, the affinities are pretty bare bones, but that doesn't mean it's not lovely, right? Or you can rent a high-rise mansion on the side of the beach, right? With every single luxury you didn't even know you needed, right? And that is literally the gambit of the fiscal sponsorship space. Right, going from ad hoc, kind of like here you go run on your own, to more seasoned fiscal sponsors that do this as a designated practice. So just take a look at the different fiscal sponsors and see which one really aligns with your mission. We're pretty friendly in this space. We all refer out to each other. I have projects that I refer out to that are specifically medical or veteran or social justice, right? Because I've got deep knowledge in arts and innovation, and that's our sweet spot. So it makes more sense to align with a project that is already known to your funders. And it's also, you're relying on their credibility too. So it's literally kind of catapulting like you through the first 3 years of that startup phase, and just focusing on that mission.
Melissa, I'm going to say it out loud and recorded, right? Like it's going to be in perpetuity. I really do believe any nonprofit that is started under a fiscal sponsor first before it launched on its own. Maybe that's bizarre to think and even to say out loud, but I do see so much value, right? Because it's a lot of work. You're starting a business. You've got IRS compliance. You've got so many things that you have to check off and do that. I don't think, coming to this with so much passion, but the lack of knowledge when it comes to the compliance, I just say, please start as a fiscal sponsor, right? At least do the first 3 years. That way, learn, change, adapt, see what works for you. Again, maybe that's my crazy thinking, Melissa, but that's what I'm going to put out into the universe.
I completely agree. I think if you want to start a nonprofit and you want to test the space, is there a market for this? Is there space for me in this market to do this, right? Do I have the funding infrastructure? Do I really want to work in nonprofit? Before you go pay a lawyer to file everything for you and create your bylaws, all these things are very, very expensive. And I don't think people understand how expensive it can be running a nonprofit, because it's no different than starting up another business. You're going to have some capital to start up this nonprofit entity. And if you are piloting that in a safe space that has tools and resources, your odds of success are higher.
Much higher. I can only imagine. And I'm sure there's data around that. Data is sexy. So
absolutely.
I'm sure there's information. Okay, if you could challenge funders and philanthropic leaders to shift one thing, just one, right? And how they support creative, just one. I'm sure you have a list, but how they support creative and innovative work. What would it be and why?
I think as fiscal sponsorship is growing, funders really need to be more educated about what fiscal sponsorship is and really understand it and understand the two models. And then when they're doing, have applications, have a space to say we are a fiscally sponsored project so they can really explain the difference and they can come with that credibility and really highlight that they've chosen a really smart business route to go through that. Because I feel like sometimes the application process, not intentionally, can kind of weed out fiscally sponsored projects just because of the way the grant applications can be structured, right? And it's not intentional. It's just that this is a rapidly growing space in the nonprofit sector. And I think that we're growing faster than funders are aware of.
That is very insightful. And I really appreciate you calling that out. I think a lot of times what I've seen in my career, 20 plus in the sector, is, we are slow to adopt. And so the applications are simply staying the same because that's what we did last year. That's what we did the year before. And instead of saying, okay, how can we best provide support, be more inclusive to, our partners in all formats, right? All different ways. So again, very insightful, Melissa, and I appreciate you sharing that. Okay, how can people learn more about you? I know for myself, I have learned already some really fantastic insights from you. So I have a feeling others listening and or watching the YouTube, they're going to want to connect with you, right? So where do we find you? How do we find you? What if we want to talk to you about a fiscal, opportunity? What does this look like?
Absolutely. So please visit our website. We are thefundingstudio.org. You can also follow us on our socials. We have a really fun mascot named Lolly the Llama. She's named after one of our really successful crowdfunding campaigns. So everything is branded The Funding Studio. We're really easy to see and find. And then just reach out, request an appointment. I would be happy to talk to you about the concept of your project and if we're the right fit. If not, I know pretty much everybody. So I will find you the right fit.
Yeah, that's very generous. I love that about our community. I too have potential clients come to me and I say, I'm not the right fit for you, but I have a handful of people that I can already do a soft intro to. So I appreciate you offer that as well. Well, again, you've been phenomenal, but I want to offer you one final soundbite or, something to leave us with here, Melissa, is if there's a final piece of advice or takeaway that you want to leave our listeners with today, what would you like them to know?
This actually just came to me while we were talking. I had a completely different one prepared, but I would say it's a reminder to philanthropists, to funders, that fiscal sponsorship is the solution that you've been asking for. You've been asking us to stop duplicating efforts, to combine our resources, to work together. And fiscal sponsorship is literally that umbrella structure that is the solution to all of these things you've asked us for over the last, I've been doing this for over a decade, because let's not age ourselves here. But regardless, this is the solution that they've been asking for a very, very long time. And just to realize how rapidly growing this part of the sector is.
You are right, and I see that.
I'm going to give you my last one. My other one is that just remember that giving makes people happy.
It does. Yeah. It makes me happy to give as well, honestly. Mm-hmm. So, well, Melissa, you've been fantastic. Can we have coffee? Because I'd like to sit down and nerd out with you.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Good. I love it. Well, thanks again. You've been phenomenal. And I know I'm walking away with some insight and, it's timely. Our sector is changing. We've got a lot of things to consider, and I appreciate you bringing your valuable insights to the conversation. Thanks again.
Thank you, Jarrett. It's been wonderful.